Good morning, everyone. So now we're going to talk about part three of how Christmas has evolved. And this is going to come more of the Christmas that we know here today and that we celebrate. So we've covered the Yule log and the evergreen and the Christmas tree. So now the major change started happening in the 1800s. In 1822, an Episcopal minister in New York City named Clement Clark Moore wrote a poem about a saint that came down a chimney on Christmas Eve. Many of you will know the story as the night before Christmas, a visit of St. Nicholas, or the night before Christmas. So a couple different versions of the book there. Um, Another thing we have is a minister to Mexico, Joel R. Poinsett. He brought back a plant, and it seemed to really fit our holiday. We now call that plant the poinsettia. It kind of comes after his last name there. And we had several things that started happening in 1843. One was an English firm printed the first Christmas card. I believe this is the first Christmas card what I could find. And they quickly became very, very popular. And companies on both in England and in America started printing them for people to send out. The second thing that happened that year was Charles Dickens, wrote the poem A Christmas Carol. And people learned from this poem about family and charity and that they can't be ignored at Christmas time. So the next comes the Christmas tree. That comes from Germany. And again, the Norse, which is connected to Germany, that was all that whole big area. And they would decorate their evergreens for many centuries, they were doing it. Well, Queen Victoria, she of England, married Prince Albert of Germany. And he brought his customs with him to England. One of those customs was the Christmas tree. In 1848, a paper in London published an engraving of the royal family standing around a Christmas tree. It took off. The majority of the homes in England at that time started having Christmas trees. Even the Americans started adopting the Christmas tree because people were starting to connect after the Civil War or Revolutionary War. Now we start connecting to things from the old country. And again, that would be the Christmas tree. And so this is a color print. It would have been in a black and white, the print that they would have had in the paper. So the next thing is during the Victorian era, again, there was a jolly old elf was added to the season. Saint Nick, or as we call him, Santa Claus. Saint Nick was given his name by a Greek Orthodox bishop named Saint Nicholas. They called him Nicholas Sinterklaas, or they called Saint Nick Sinterklaas in the Netherlands. So anyone, I brought up this Miracle on 34th Street, that watched the 1947 version of this movie would have recalled this little girl in the department store singing with him and calling him Sinterklaas. So in the beginning, we had no clear version of what Santa Claus looked like. There was many different things describing him, from some kind of a scary gnome to a pagan sorcerer. It wasn't until Thomas Nast, a cartoonist, published a cartoon in one of Harper Weekly's that got the round jolly Santa that we now know. He had a few versions before this, but in 1881, this is what we got. And this is how we see Santa, or a version of Santa. And soon the department stores started realizing that if they advertised using Santa, they could get lots of money. And as things went on, they started realizing, oh, if we actually have Santa, we can bring in even more money. One more thing here. We have Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer. In 1939, Robert May, a copywriter at Montgomery Ward department store, He wrote a children's book to lure children into the store. Because they had the adults coming in and buying things, but now they wanted to get the children. The book ended up being Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I really like this story because you end up with a character that has a form of a handicap. He's got this red nose, it's not like everyone else's. And yet he manages to save Christmas. It's not a weakness, it's actually a strength for him. So instead of having a handicap or being disabled or anything like that, or it ends up being a strength for him. So it's awesome. Awesome story. So there's been many, many more movies and stories published about the holidays that have created and altered it as we know it today. And I'm sure many of you can name off a ton. And right now the TVs are just loaded with all of our Christmas movies and the favorites that we all love. So I hope everyone has a nice, safe holiday season. See you in the new year.